The main character asks to be embraced without unnecessary pain. She asks not to let her waver in the face of pain and to help her maintain her faith. The pain is fleeting, but the fruits of patience will be sweet. The knights are looking for her and breaking into every room. One man, to whom they obey, orders them to break down the door. The rumors were indeed true about this girl being a beauty. Even in the midst of all this chaos, she tries to act like a duchess. Then the girl asks if they are really going to execute her here. But by order of the emperor, the man must take her alive. At that moment, she wondered when everything had gone wrong. Sitting in this old chair, she reflected on the honor of a nobleman. She endured everything for trifles, but she can't even die the way she wants. Lady Edel of Lancaster was briefly the Duchess of Lancaster. Next, we are transported to a moment that happened 3 years ago. Edel heard people talking about her and her actions behind her back. They tried to speak more quietly so that no one would hear. Guests remarked on how unwavering Edel was. Wondering if all this didn't bother her, they wondered what Edel was thinking. Edel was raised and prepared for marriage into one of the powerful families of the empire. The main character lived for a year and 8 months as the wife of an old duke. The lady was merely a means of uniting the two families. All her life, Edel was raised for one and only purpose. She collapsed where she stood because she was afraid to run. Edel couldn't bear the thought of meeting her death on the floor. Edel has no choice but to endure this until the very end. The guests began to ask His Highness to give the traitor to them. They asked the gentleman to take pity on the old widower. Someone suddenly remarks that no one here seems to have any dignity. But since Edel is now just a slave, they no longer need to stand on ceremony. Emperor Demarchus Tuberinus speaks of this. He almost forgot about the main hero of the suppression of the rebellion. The emperor asked Laszlo if he didn't need a woman. If he wants, the emperor will give him the main trophy of war. People were saying that Edel had married the wrong man and was now fallen. They don't understand why His Majesty wants to award the main trophy to Laszlo. And, as far as Edel remembers, Laszlo was a mercenary. Laszlo Krisis is the head of the largest mercenary guild empire. For the hereditary nobles, he is the greatest threat among the new nobility. The nobles, who considered mercenaries to be scum, looked down on Laszlo. Suddenly, Laszlo declares that he, in principle, does not have enough maids. The emperor cannot believe that he is going to make a servant out of the former duchess. Thus, the emperor agrees to his request, giving Laszlo Edel. Edel can't believe that this is the reward for her patience. In the past, Edel's mother blamed her for daring to contradict her father. But Edel only wanted to understand how she could marry a duke who was older than her father. He already has a mistress and children. He is not going to touch Edel. And after his death, Edel promises to receive his entire inheritance. The woman realized that her daughter did not understand anything at all. After all, once she becomes a duchess, even her father will bow to her. It seems like it was destined for her all along. Father was unhappy that Edel did not want to try for the sake of the family. He tells her that he went through humiliation to achieve this. Edel realized that she could free herself from her father and leave home. She reassured herself that the duke would not touch her, busy with his mistress. Edel also endured ridicule and evil words from the duke's house. She managed dozens of ledgers and hundreds of services. She had to receive daily guests and hold long receptions. Edel never made a single mistake. She played her role with a smile on her face, and all for the sake of a moment of freedom that will never come. One day, she was asked to flee because the imperial army was approaching. Until that moment, Edel knew nothing, and she did not receive even a small part of the mansion. As her father wanted, the main character became an impeccable lady. Slavery was abolished long ago. It's just called something else now. The duke's daughters, who were sitting with her in prison, accused her of pretending to be grateful. They shouted at her, cried, saying that Edel had always been like this. They wanted to know why her father gave her the position of duchess. Edel is not surprised by such rude words, thinking that they are simply tired. But the girl does not want to waste her energy on senseless swearing. She needs to save her strength at least for death. House Canyon escaped destruction by relinquishing its rights to Edel, and Count Krisis said that he would take her as his servant. The young captive can hardly expect to be treated humanely. Although she was a prisoner of the state, she was placed in a prison with good conditions. Her whole body is screaming in pain. Her head hurts terribly. The next morning, she wakes up at her usual time, despite being tired. Today, Edel is handed over to Count Krisis, and she must find a way to die. Therefore, she understands that this morning is the last in her life. The light coming through the prison window seemed to be saying goodbye to her. The criminal's last meal was sumptuous. Edel can only hope that nothing happens to the poor things. A guard approached her cell and ordered her to leave. Edel decided that even while dying, she needed to maintain her dignity. If the servant's gaze is not sharp, she will be able to jump out of the carriage. And if she's lucky, her death will be instantaneous. Edel hopes that she will get an inexperienced servant, but she didn't expect at all that Count Chrysis would be here in person. If he suddenly talks to her, he definitely won't like her. Edel doesn't understand how he can treat someone like her well. Suddenly, Laszlo throws his cloak over her legs, asking her to stop shaking. Edel didn't even notice how her hands started shaking. She thought she could jump out of the carriage if she threw her cloak at him. Edel tries to believe in herself, and she can already hear another carriage approaching. But as soon as she starts counting, Laszlo tells her that it's better not to. Edel realized that he knew everything, and that was why he put her in his carriage. So the main character realized that this man would not leave her alone. Edel saw what the hell she would have to live in looked like. As she was getting off the carriage, she felt a sudden pain in her ankle. But, having already resigned herself to the fact that she was falling, Edel did not feel any pain. When she raised her head, she saw that Laszlo had managed to catch her. She immediately apologized, hoping he didn't think anything of it. When the man let her go, he took his cloak and asked her to follow him. At the estate, Laszlo asks the housekeeper if everything is all right. The woman immediately ran up and said that Masha was looking after the affairs of the estate. Edel doesn't quite understand why the butler didn't come out here. Laszlo reminds her that they are short of maids and asks her to give orders to Edel. First, Edel needs to wash and change her clothes. The girl noticed that he did not order her to be taken to his room. Another maid, Mina, tells Lady Boyan that it turns out that Edel used to be a duchess. They couldn't believe that the duchess would now be serving. She orders Mina to take Edel to the spare bedroom. It was kind of them to give her clean clothes and bring food to her room. It turns out that it is also possible to live in such a cramped room. Everything around her seems to tell Edel that she is no longer a servant. The maids are not given hot water. In winter, they will have to wash with cold water. But Edel doesn't think they have any financial difficulties. But in the end, she decided not to think about how miserable the estate was. The main character will have to accept reality as it is. It's surprising that after everything she's been through, she still feels hungry. Edel never thought she would ever taste such fruits. She just didn't want to become a toy to satisfy someone's desires. And she wondered if she would be able to eat these fruits tomorrow. She wants to taste the sweetness of fruit again and just live her life. Later, the butler informs the emperor that Laszlo personally took Edel. Demarchus asks him if he thinks the count's trophy is worthy. Others may not know Laszlo's true nature. He made a contract with the emperor and entered into the final war of conquest. The emperor told the count that he could ask him for anything he wanted. But he doesn't need anything, since his payment is specified in detail in the contract. The emperor noticed this bold behavior without a shadow of fear. But to tame the count, you need the right bait. The title of count alone will not be enough here. Previously, no one could believe that this mercenary became a count. At that reception, Laszlo was the main hero of the victory, but was not accepted by anyone. And in the midst of all this, his gaze was directed at Edel. The dice have been cast, and now all that remains is to watch. In fact, Laszlo didn't think he would get involved with this duchess. He will receive the title in order to marry off his sister. He became a nobleman, but his contempt for the commoner and the mercenary did not go away. It had already become clear to him how he would be treated on the marriage market. The father sold his daughter to an old man for a connection with one of the 4 big houses. Edel smiled even when she was sold as a wife to an old man. And for some reason, at that moment, Laszlo couldn't take his eyes off her. Although they were still not destined to even exchange a word. Edel was born and raised an aristocrat, and now she serves in his house. He knows that the emperor is thus warning all who are plotting treason. If Laszlo had not accepted her, Edel would either have been sold or would have committed suicide. She was left alone on the duke's estate when everyone fled, and the count broke off relations with the family. He does not understand the pride of aristocrats to simply decide to die. He doesn't know what they are so desperately trying to save at the cost of their own lives. Maybe if we keep Edel here, we can find some useful use for her. When Edel was washing clothes, Boyun scolded her for doing it wrong. Edel apologized and said she would do it better. Besides this, Bohyun asked Celia to teach Edel how to wash clothes. For some reason, Bohyun mentions that Edel is a traitor to House Lancaster. Laughing, the woman asked who knew what else she could do. Celia asked if they were sure they wouldn't have any problems later. Others discuss whether she really thinks the Duke's ghost will come for his wife. Now Edel understood what Bohyun had meant yesterday. She didn't expect that she would one day manage the Duchess. It seems she is trying to assert her power by dragging Edel into the dirt. She's been acting this way from the very beginning, hoping to make Edel cry. After all, Edel was probably the one who rejoiced most of all at the fall of the ducal house. When Bohyun left, the maids breathed a sigh of relief. Celia is the maid in charge of the laundry. Edel needs to finish this before her laundry gets picked on again. The only problem is how much more Edel's body can take. The servants tell Edel's father that his daughter has become a mercenary's trophy. He yells and asks not to mention this useless girl. Edel's father is named Dustin Canyon, and he believes that Edel has dishonored them. He had previously asked the emperor to believe him that the Duke of Lancaster had threatened them. The emperor assumed he didn't care about Edel. The man became even more angry, answering that no. Since his daughter is already married, she has no connection to their family. On his knees, he not only begged, but also gave away half of his fortune. DeMarcus became emperor after his worthless father. He even brought in commoners to strengthen imperial power. Edel has become a useless girl, a plaything of a dirty mercenary. Dustin doesn't understand how Laszlo dared to use him and humiliate him like that. He orders his servants to keep their heads down for now. He is confident that he will definitely rise again, and no one will dare to look down on his house. When Edel went to hang up her clothes, Celia wanted to help her. Since they were also on the same path, they agreed to help her. So the three maids began to hang up the clothes. 10 days have passed since Edel arrived at this mansion. She worked hard as a laundress and can proudly say so. Thanks to this, the main character was able to get used to washing. But there is always one problem left in the form of the maid Bohyun. Celia defended Edel, saying she was doing well for a newbie. She asks Bohyun to mind her own business and not interfere here. The laundry is Celia's responsibility. She told Bohyun to let her show her what to do since she was so smart. Bohyun, of course, left, but said that she would keep an eye on them. Celia said that Bohyun had already gotten on their nerves with her nagging. She also asks Edel not to worry or fret. The food will be worse for a couple of days, but then everything will get better again. Edel didn't have the opportunity to talk to them and find out what they were thinking. She thought that perhaps they just didn't have time to think about others. The work is so hard that her hands are covered in calluses. During these 10 days, Laszlo never looked for her, as if he had forgotten about her. Edel is grateful and glad to get out of the Duke's house, and tomorrow she will have to work hard again. Edel hopes that this day will also end well. As soon as she closed her eyes, she heard footsteps outside the door. Frightened, the girl asks who is there. It turned out to be Daisy, who lives in the next room. Daisy is the youngest maid in this mansion. When Daisy entered the room, Edel asked her what she wanted. It wasn't anything special, but Daisy wanted to tell her something. She hands Edel some ointment and cream for the sore spots. Daisy said she heard Edel moaning at night. Since the walls here are thin and Daisy lives nearby, you can hear everything. Edel apologized, but Daisy sleeps well even when there is noise. Daisy also heard that Bohyun was bullying Edel. Edel is not used to work, and it is hard when something hurts. That's why Daisy wanted to give her the medicine. In the world Edel lived in before, nothing was done without reason. It's amazing that such a young girl can care so much about others. It turns out that in this world there are such pure, sincere views. Edel thanked her, and Daisy clarified that she could just call her Daisy. Edel agreed and also asked to be called by her first name. Daisy was a little embarrassed and asked if she could call her sister. She offered to rub her back, since Edel herself could not reach there. Edel regrets that she doesn't have a diary, because now she would write down that she has made a new friend. The next morning, as Celia had said, breakfast was meager. The pain in my back has subsided a little, and it's all thanks to Daisy. In the past, Adele was often forced to starve herself to maintain her figure. Later, Count Chrysis reads the letter that was sent to him. After this, he ordered Daisy to be brought to him into the living room. She was surprised by the sudden visit, wondering why he had called her. But the girl was counting on the fact that today would be a good day. Every time in his presence, Edel feels depressed. He asks if she knows the Marquise Barbara Celestine. Edel was surprised that he was talking about this man. She's not sure Laszlo should know about her friendship with Barbara. Edel admits that they know each other and have only had tea together a couple of times. Laszlo says she sent him such a desperate letter. In the letter, Barbara writes that she couldn't help but pick up her pen after hearing the news. She asks Laszlo not to push Edel into even greater despair. Until this moment, Edel was sure that everyone had turned their backs on her. But Barbara sincerely believes in her innocence and worries about her. She received support from the estate, and now she received a letter from an old friend. But the main character doesn't know what Laszlo will think about this. He may decide that Barbara supports the Duke. She tells him that her family and Barbara's family have no connection, but they were friends. The girl asks Laszlo not to misunderstand the letter. Laszlo said that everyone seemed to think he was some kind of monster. Edel immediately began to apologize if she suddenly said something wrong. She's shaking as if Laszlo is about to chop off someone's head. But suddenly, he declared that he shouldn't have said that in front of her. This is the first time Edel has seen such an expression on Laszlo's face. She wondered if he was really apologizing to her. For Edel, Laszlo is the one who caught and protected the first daughter of the Duke of Lancaster. She must feel disgusted and loathsome being around him. Laszlo realized that he was being too tactless. He wonders what Edel might be thinking about right now. Edel finds it strange that she is still alive. She asked him not to worry about his words. Even if it is difficult for her to express her resentment, there is not a drop of resentment in her. Impeccable manners and speech are the result of upbringing. Edel is not at all like Laszlo, who has not changed since then. The man suddenly thought that he felt ashamed now. He wants Edel to write the answer herself, because his excuses won't be believed anyway. Edel smiled, not quite believing that she could do this. He asks her to write that he will not address her in the way society expects. Edel wondered what kind of rumors were going on among the aristocrats. They may think that he, having a younger sister, is capable of such baseness. This is cruel to the fact that he has never even held a woman's hand. Laszlo noticed that Edel was fragile, like a wounded bird. Although she looks strong, she is so fragile that it is a pity. Edel is horrified by the touch of a simple mercenary. That's why Laszlo decided that he would never harm her. After a moment of silence, Edel thanks the Count again. As night approached, Daisy and Edel went to their rooms. The girl realized that there had never been hot water in this mansion. The main character decided that she needed to take better care of Daisy. She entered the room and saw a letter from Count Chrysis. Edel asked him to borrow paper and a pen. She doesn't know where to start because she has so much she wants to say. She cannot write to her beloved and respected Barbara as before. Edel writes that she doesn't know how to express her gratitude to Barbara for her compassion. She still remembers their first meeting 7 years ago. It's Countess Radrick's tea party, and she's not getting along very well with Barbara. Edel asked why they invited the Marquise then, but it was too late to think, because Marquise Barbara had already arrived. Edel noticed that Barbara was limping on one leg, and her steps sound louder in this room than in others. But even without knowing their relationship, Edel cannot take advantage of other people's shortcomings. She reminds Barbara that she helped her in town when her tire broke. Then she refused gratitude and left. But Edel remembered her. Edel had little social experience, so she didn't recognize Barbara. She thanks her again, hoping it looks natural. Barbara found her pushy, and Edel apologized for it. In her youth, she was proud of the fact that she helped an elderly lady in trouble. Edel realized how easy it was to offend someone in society. Barbara noted that gossip has become more vicious than in her time. She asked what was wrong with saving a family that was going down. Edel is surprised that one can live like this, and it won't be a mistake. Mrs. Radrick is outraged that Barbara is going too far. Lady Oberon took over the external affairs that her husband could not handle. Everyone should fight for their rights and not denigrate others. Radricka's friends began to discuss Barbara, saying that she sees herself in Oberon. They calm Radricka down and ask her not to pay attention. After that noisy tea party, Edel hurried to find Barbara. Edel was wrong to feel sorry for Barbara, as she turned out to be stronger than the others. The girl wants to become as strong as Barbara. Barbara is glad to hear this and would also like to continue the conversation. After that, they began to meet and talk often. She wonders if anything would have changed if she had listened to Barbara's words back then. Barbara asked her to free herself from the manipulation of men who wanted to control her. Edel couldn't do this because then she would die. Barbara told her that she could only ask, and the woman would help her. Then, this was the last meeting between Edel and Barbara. Now there is no Barbara to take care of her. The maid tells Bohyun that the Count summoned Adele to him. Bohyun thinks this is too suspicious, and that it is definitely not without reason. The maid says that Edel has too strange a character. Bohyun doesn't want to let them rise higher. They don't even pay taxes, so she decided to teach them a lesson. The maid reminds that some servants complain about the lack of cold water, but they don't even suspect why they don't wash with them. Of course, the maid denies everything, because hot water is a privilege only for the two of them. The money she pays is reimbursed by selling the Count's things. Bohyun warns her to keep her mouth shut. Madame Lydia trusts only her, and the Count rarely appears at the estate. Edel hands over to the butler the letters that the Count instructed him to leave behind. Celia complains about the endless laundry, which she is already tired of. They thought that Bohyun was whispering something in Ms. Lydia's ear again. Lydia said that their mansion must function perfectly. The cleaning took so long that Celia's whole body ached. Edel thought that guests were coming to visit them, but in fact, it was the housekeeper being mischievous. Edel has been here for a month now, but has never seen any guests. She thought that the Count had so few guests because of the rumors about him. But Edel herself also initially thought badly of him. But judging by his kindness to her, he seems like a good person. Even without guests, the maids have a lot of work because of the mistress. Celia clarifies that she is talking about Count Laszlo's sister. When Lydia is in a bad mood, it's hard for everyone. They also say that Laszlo earned good money since childhood. Even though they were commoners, they never went hungry. Celia thinks Lydia should be grateful. Laszlo and his sister became nobles, and Edel went from being a noblewoman to being a servant. She first learned how to wash clothes in this mansion. For Laszlo and Lydia, this is their first experience in high society. Laszlo is not interested in the affairs of the estate, and his only daughter is obsessed with the work of the maids. There is not even a butler in the estate. All power is in the hands of the housekeeper. Many maids quit because of Bohyun. Laszlo looks scary, but he is actually a kind person. However, there were still a lot of problems. As long as Emperor DeMarcus is in power, Laszlo must live up to his position. The Count needs to quickly find a good assistant or get married. Marriage is one of the good ways to survive in a noble society. Whoever becomes his wife, Edel wants that person to feel sorry for her. The next day, Edel met with Lydia Chrysis. These brother and sister always appear suddenly. Edel said that the House of Lancaster no longer exists, so she is simply Edel. She doesn't even know how old Lydia is, and she doesn't feel any pressure. She asks Edel how she could marry an old man. But unfortunately, Edel could not choose who to marry. Even a little girl understands this, but her father could not. Lydia then asks how Edel could share his bed. He had a mistress, so they slept separately. She managed the Duke's money for the rebellion. And now Lydia asked what Edel's role was in this house. There was a time for Edel when she desperately wanted to prove her worth. If she does her job well, she will get better. Only now did she realize how stupid this life was. Lydia doesn't understand why she smiles, thinking that she despises her. She started shouting that Edel couldn't pretend to be a count's wench. Edel doesn't understand what she said that made her angry. Lydia furiously asks how Edel dares to look down on her. The girl ordered the maid to kneel down immediately. Edel sat down and apologized, saying that she stood because there was no order to sit. Lydia decided that Edel had no pride, since she obeyed even her. Noble pride is terribly priceless. Edel replied that she was her mistress and that her knees were not so expensive. She wondered what true pride and honor were. Lydia said that she knew what was on the nobles' minds. Her brother trained these wild mercenaries and won the war. Lady Lydia sees other nobles through Edel. Lydia ordered her to get out of her room immediately. This girl stands in the very center of the madness that Edel left behind. Edel realized that Lydia reminded her of someone. Her younger sister had previously said that she couldn't take it anymore. She didn't want to get married because she had already suffered enough. So Edel's younger sister left forever, and she never saw her again. The history of the Canyon family was not particularly remarkable. Having become rich, their great-grandfather presented the house with a huge sum of gold. Edel's younger sister, Lynn, was scolded for not learning her poems correctly. At that moment, Edel began to answer instead of Lynn. Father asks them not to forget about the 4 powerful families. He also asks that they never look down on the Canyon clan. Lynn asked Edel if she would be like that when she turned 10. Lynn thinks she's stupid, but Edel tells her she's not. Father speaks so harshly because he wants Lynn to try harder. Edel invites Lynn to go get some cookies, promising to share them with her. And after that, she promises to help Lin with her studies. Lin agrees without any problem because she likes everything with Edel. But the butler asks them to return to the room because Lin is forbidden from eating sweets. Because she failed the exam, the count forbade her to eat sweets. He asked Lin if she had finished her homework for today. Lin came to her senses and ran away, telling Edel to eat alone. Father was always strict, but recently he became too cruel. Lin doesn't understand why he is so angry only with them. Edel feels how heavy her soul is and how angry she is. She wanted to become an adult as soon as possible, at least for Lin. She can try and become an elegant bride. She should always walk around with a fragile smile and bring her father the power he desires. But even when Lin turned 16, her father continued to scold her. He said that her sister had already made her debut in society. He wants Lin to finally become useful. Lin doesn't know if she will be free if she becomes like her father. But Lin understands that she can never become like Edel. All she wanted was to fly away like a bird. Suddenly, one day, Edel was informed that Lin was dead. She fell from the third-floor balcony while looking outside. Edel, who had begun to regain hope after meeting Barbara, sank back into despair. In fact, she had always thought about a way out like Lin's too. But then she had Lin, and she thought she just had to be patient. So if Lydia is suffering, Edel wants to teach her to endure it all. Lydia felt heavy at heart and was angry at her own powerlessness. Laszlo only needs this mansion for meetings with mercenaries. But in the real Count's house, there was no such silence. At the entrance to the house, he is met by his sister Lydia. She asked what he was doing in the palace while she followed him. Laszlo guesses that she wants to tell him something. Lydia modestly replied that she had been invited to a tea party. Viscountess Emerson suits her, but Laszlo doesn't know one. He tells her that she doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to. When Lydia gets there, she doesn't know what to talk about. So she asks her brother if he could find her a governess. He asks her to promise to study well if he finds such a person. She wants to change the subject, but Laszlo asks her to answer directly. Everyone he found couldn't last more than 2 weeks. Lydia remembers that they were the first to start laughing at her. They pretend to be well-mannered, but they actually think Lydia is a fool. She may tolerate socialites, but in this mansion, she can scream as much as she wants. But Lydia asked if it was okay to quit because of a couple of comments. She tells how Edel knelt before her. Laszlo, horrified, asks if she understands what a shameful act she has committed. He said the aristocrats they despised were doing the same thing. Lydia knows about this, but thinks that she can do the same. The aristocrats have always looked down on her, and she does the same. But Laszlo explains that she was making fun of the maid. Lydia doesn't behave like this in front of real aristocrats, but she didn't even tell him about the insults she was enduring. In fact, Lydia cannot say a word in front of the aristocrats. She doesn't care what happens to her. She doesn't want to see her brother anymore. But Laszlo himself doesn't know what to do. He thinks it's all because of the title the emperor gave him. Mercenaries who have despaired of life need hope. Power is needed to protect everything that Laszlo holds dear. Someday, he will accept his fate, as the emperor accepted his. Laszlo is going to warn Lydia that this is the last time he will look for someone for her. He is also interested to know how Edel is doing. With her pride, it was hardly easy for her to kneel. He's not sure if he should go and apologize for his sister. His head cleared a little. He decided to stop thinking about it. After the victory banquet, the world is unsettled. They think the Lancaster family fell because of Laszlo Chrysis. They didn't expect the imperial family to put aside their pride. Demarcus Tuberin also went through the war, and what dignity can we talk about? As long as Demarcus is in power, the Marquises believe they will only become weaker. Until it's time to act directly, it's better to use small fry. If the 3 great houses interfere directly, there will be suspicion. Marquis Toplin asked, "What about this upstart?" Marquis Barrington knows that Keon's daughter was given to Chrysis. Marquis Wilblair said this guy wasn't bad. He doesn't know if even the smallest fry can handle the job. Soon Edel wakes up from a bad dream. Sometimes she wonders why it wasn't enough for her father to just be rich. They would be better off sacrificing shelters and hospitals for the common people. But, however, now even these thoughts were useless. During breakfast, Edel noticed her maid scolding another. She doesn't understand what's going on, because they had different areas of work. But perhaps there is some matter that Edel doesn't know about. For some reason, the mansion seems emptier to the heroine than it was. When they arrived, there was no one inside yet, not even the housekeeper. Celia invites Edel to look around the mansion, as she has been here for 2 months. She tells her that Edel will go collect the laundry, and they will take care of the rest. It's okay, because the housekeeper definitely won't be coming today. Celia noted that Edel had a hard time with the lady yesterday. In the end, the girl agrees and leaves as instructed. In fact, it would still be hard for Edel to handle it alone. Celia believes that Edel must also know this mansion well. The other maids can leave, but Edel, like a trophy, cannot leave the mansion. This is the first time Edel has left the laundry room so early. She decided not to stay too long and to return quickly. Edel feels recognized when she is given a new assignment. At some point, she notices familiar maids, friends of the housekeeper. She doesn't understand why they are not in their areas. There are also no maids to work here. Edel had long since realized that a group had formed around Bohyun, and she wondered if Laszlo Krisis knew about this. It seems all she can do is watch the mansion's problems. Edel suddenly heard Laszlo's voice outside the door. She was about to leave to remain unnoticed, but it was too late. She was asked why she was sneaking around here like a mouse. The man asked who she was and what she was doing there. Edel said that if she was disturbing, she could come at another time. Laszlo tells her that she doesn't have to collect the laundry from his room, and that she can go. The Count's assistant is surprised, because it seems he sees her for the first time. But then he remembered that it was the Duchess of Lancaster. He asked if Edel even knew how to wash. Laszlo asks how he can say such things when he has seen her hands. These were the hands of a man who works hard. Edel never received any letters from Count Canyon. The assistant was even surprised when the Count called Edel by name. Laszlo ordered to return to the conversation, asking to keep a close eye on the rat. The assistant decided to trust his captain's instincts, but he thought that his intuition was also correct. Even if Edel gets a chance to speak out, the Count's confidants will not believe her. In the meantime, the heroine decided to do everything in her power. Soon, a certain Edmund Milton is asked if he has finished his training. He was told that he shouldn't push himself so hard, because he already had a lot to do. But he does not specifically look up to the guard, and it is unknown what forces will rise again. He just believes that you always need to be prepared. If it weren't for Count Krisis, Edmund would have been captain of the guard. But Edmund says that every person has his place. The military forces protecting the imperial court are divided into two parts. Society values the guards that serve His Majesty, but Edmund is just doing his job. He is sure that Laszlo's appointment was also calculated. This is all too much, and he doesn't like this reaction in the order. While Laszlo was changing in his room, someone knocked on his door. These people turned out to be from a knightly order, wanting to talk to him. They introduced themselves to him, but Laszlo still didn't recognize these faces. Laszlo asked them to stop flattering him and get straight to the point. They remind us that the knightly order and the guard cooperate. As a result, they ask for the honor of training under his guidance. This request came as a real surprise to Laszlo. He is the youngest captain in the guard. One guard told them that Laszlo was open to knights. In fact, Laszlo never stopped anyone from coming. It's just that many elite warriors didn't want to learn from a former mercenary. But these guys have completely different stances, bad posture. Now he realized what the emperor's words about his fate meant. Now he asks them why they want to train in his house. They replied that it would be strange to be trained by the captain of the guard under the commander of the knights. Laszlo knows not to create unnecessary tension with their command. In the end, he agrees and asks to come next Saturday. In the end, showing your basics won't be a problem. Although Laszlo doesn't know how much they can improve their skills, but a sincere desire to become stronger comes at a very high price. Bohyun announces that they will have guests coming to visit them next week. She ordered the maids to clean their areas thoroughly. They were outraged when she also ordered that all the curtains, of which there were more than 100 in the mansion, be washed. But Bohyun doesn't care, even if they don't sleep all night. She orders the maids to start from the first floor. Not only is there laundry, Adele isn't sure their people will be able to properly welcome guests. The girl doesn't understand what suddenly came over the Count. Later, the Count went to Grania Street, in the area of mansions. He is welcomed at the residence of the Marquise of Celestine. The Count meets with the Marquis and thanks him for the invitation. Later, the Marquis Celestina's wife, Barbara, comes out to him. Since Laszlo is the head of the family, she will call him Count. As expected from the head of the family, Laszlo turned out to be a difficult person. Laszlo wondered if such a reception of guests was possible in his house. Butler with impeccable service, attentive maids, Soon, Barbara decides to ask how Edel is doing. The Count has no time to be distracted, because that is precisely why he accepted the lady's invitation. A whole month has passed since Edel's reply letter. The Marquis says that Barbara herself wanted to meet him. He said that the Count certainly understood the reason for the meeting. There are three factions in high society: the Imperial Party and the old nobility, and a neutral party that does not join any side. The Marquis changes his position not only because of Edel, but because he wants to get to know the Count and the Emperor better. Laszlo doesn't even know whether he should thank them for their attempt at dialogue. Barbara said she read the letter he sent from Edel. She doesn't want to bother others, and she's probably having a hard time. They can't leave innocent Edel in this situation. Until the gossip dies down, Edel will remain a servant. Laszlo asks Barbara what she is willing to do for Zdel. The woman replied that she would do whatever was required. Laszlo thinks that he and Barbara will get along well. Barbara asks Laszlo to find himself a woman of the right age. No one will dare to interfere, and Edel will live a happy life. Lydia is informed that her brother will be delayed, as the Emperor has summoned him. She was afraid that he would not be home when his guests arrived. It is surprising that this is the first reception in this house, and Laszlo is absent. Lydia is confused. She doesn't know what to do, and is afraid of becoming a laughingstock again. Boyun tells her that everything is fine, but it is not getting better. Lydia wants someone here she can trust. She orders Mia to bring Edel here immediately. She is sure that Edel knows about tea receptions better than anyone else. Bohyun whispers that Lydia should ask Edel to do it herself. She just wants the maid to suffer constantly. Lydia tells Edel that she will be serving next to her today. She already said that the knights would arrive soon, and that her brother would be delayed. Lydia isn't sure she should greet guests at the entrance. Edel replied that the butler usually did that. But since he is not here, let the head maid take care of it. She explained that it would be appropriate to come down after their arrival. Lydia asks her to serve the guests' treats at the right time. Edel obeys her, deciding to go check out the treats in the kitchen. The main character doesn't feel well, but she needs to hold on. As the time approaches, Lydia begins to worry even more. Edel announced that the guests had arrived, and Lydia asked if she needed to come down. But first, Edel wants to tidy up her face. Lydia doesn't quite understand what she's doing, but she sits quietly in place. She has already put on makeup this morning, and everything looks normal in the mirror. But when Edel finished, Lydia looked at her reflection in surprise. She asks for more powder, but Edel says no. Such powder is inappropriate for a young unmarried lady. Young ladies are content to show their true complexion. If she puts on fake makeup, everyone will think she's trying to seduce men. Now Lydia understood why they were looking at her so strangely. But Bohyun told her that it was fashionable in high society. Edel asked her to just not do it again. Now I need to greet the guests and perform my household duties. Since Lydia has never done this, she is afraid. But Edel reassures her that everyone will still follow Lydia. Lydia is surprised that Edel treats her well, even after she was rude to her. Edel asks her to look down on her, because Lydia is the head of this house, and it will be easier that way. The Emperor does not understand why there are so many who ask for leniency after the rebellion. He is dissatisfied and asks Count Talon to sort this out. No emperor received as much support as his father. The emperor that people are looking for was an incompetent ruler. Demarchus swore to himself that he would not become like his father. Rebels should not be pardoned just because they are nobles. Many people welcome stricter laws, and more such people are needed. Count Laszlo visited the mansion of Marquis Celestine without reporting to the emperor. The relationship between Barbara and Edel is more than just friendship. Few people know that their relationship is like that of a mother and daughter. Perhaps the Count wanted to find out the mood of the moderate faction. The emperor thought that during this time, Laszlo had fallen in love with Edel. Finally, Lydia met her brother's guests. She warned that he would be a little late. Lydia is surprised that the words are flowing out of her mouth. She told them that she had prepared some snacks for them and hoped they would like them, but she didn't expect these snacks to be so modest. Lydia noticed that these guys were only looking at Edel. One of them asked if they could show me where to wash my hands. Lydia wanted to call the maid, but they made excuses that they could go with Edel. They followed Edel, inviting them to come too. Lydia doesn't think it's normal to go to the toilet right after starting. She just hopes they're not deliberately making fun of her. The guests followed Edel, telling her that she was truly beautiful. Edel immediately understood why they asked to be escorted. The main character pointed out which way the men's restroom was. But that wasn't enough for them. They wanted her to take them there. They don't think that a simple maid would dare to disobey an order. Edel may not be a duchess anymore, but that doesn't mean she can be treated like one. The knights, having visited the mansion of the authorities, harassed the maid. They were acting like complete scoundrels, and Edel asked if they knew the rules. She wants to know what kind of family they are from, so she can understand who raised them like that. It is disrespectful to pester a maid in a count's house. They started pointing fingers at her, saying that she was no longer a duchess. But Edel won't stay silent, and she's not the one who will be fired from this place. She asked them to stop unless they wanted to be dismissed from the Imperial Guard. Grabbing Edel's hand, one of the knights asks how she dares to speak to him like that. He says he gave her a chance, but words won't help. He asks Joseph not just to follow her, but to silence her. At that moment, Edel was truly afraid for herself and her life. But fortunately, at that very moment, Count Carissus returns. Edel rose from her knees and greeted the Count. The knights began to justify themselves by saying that she was the first to seduce them. The Count asks Edel if this is true, but she cannot answer. In the end, Laszlo says that he will have to cut off the guests' heads. In fact, he heard their conversation, their dirty intentions. They again make excuses that they lost their heads over such a beautiful woman. Laszlo decides to ask Edel what she wants him to do. She thinks that military law should be followed. In addition to dismissal, a flogging and compensation are due. There was a case when a captain of the Imperial Order cut off the hand of his subordinate knight. Laszlo asks why she, a laundress, is here. Edel didn't have time to answer because she lost consciousness. Rumors about what happened in the mansion instantly spread among the servants. Laszlo yells at Bohyun, asking how she works in the mansion. He asks her if he told her about her status as Edel. He reminds that it is a gift from the Emperor himself. Laszlo asks what she was doing if she didn't know what was going on. And he reminds her that it is her duty to keep an eye on Lydia. If this woman does not recover, Bohyun will be taken away by the Emperor of the Knightly Order. Bohyun doesn't understand what's so special about Edel. She doesn't like that the whole mansion is in an uproar because of her. Edmund arrived soon after, and was sorry that he and Laszlo were meeting under such circumstances. Edmund says the punishment will be quite severe. They decided to exclude the knights from the order. After such a vile act, they are not worthy of being called knights. Edmund, on behalf of the order, would like to apologize to Edel. He warned that he had no dirty intentions. But the knights remember how he said that Laszlo would agree to the duel. Then Edmund will be able to see Edel in the mansion, and no one would have come if not for his words. The knights realized that Edmund was simply using them for his own benefit. Edmund smiles, pretending he never even said that. He told the knights that they could ask the Count for personal lessons. They wanted to learn from him, not to stare at the women in the mansion. Laszlo thought that these knights were being incited. He told Edmund that he would convey his apologies to the maid. He asked if anything else was needed, and when Laszlo said no, he left. Edmund is angry that Laszlo dares to behave so insolently in front of him. The position of the youngest captain should have gone to Edmund, but Laszlo took it. He believes that the Emperor rewarded him too generously. He thought Edel wasn't worth paying attention to, but now he was interested. When Edel woke up, she didn't immediately understand where she was. Celia, who was sitting nearby, said that Edel had lost consciousness. She tells her how she almost died because the fever was too high. Daisy had been looking after her before, but she went away to rest. Edel is surprised that there is no hot water for the maids, but Laszlo sent a doctor. Celia apologizes because she had to refuse the housekeeper's instructions. And when Edel was called by Lydia, Celia couldn't stop her either. She thought it would be better to have guests than to bother with washing. But Edel was always grateful that Celia helped her everywhere. Edel is just like them, so Celia tried to help her fit in. She couldn't help but think that Edel could handle anything, since she was a duchess. But thanks to friends like them, Edel was able to hold on. Celia took her hands and thanked her for saying that. The girl asked him to count on her from now on, and Edel smiled in response. A little later, having learned of her awakening, Layla and Daisy arrived. This meal with friends seemed to her more delicious than ever. If happiness had a taste, this is what it would be. Then, 3 days had already passed since this incident. The housekeeper's pay was cut by 2 weeks for her disturbances. Listening to all this, Edel assumed that the Count was probably furious. Then she went into the office of Laszlo, who had called her. The man asks her if she has heard about those scoundrels. According to the Count, Bo-hyun and Lydia are to blame for failing to fulfill their duties. But Edel replied that Lydia was still too young to receive guests like an aristocrat. Anyone would feel confused and scared when faced with the unknown without preparation. Count Laszlo asks if she is really protecting Lydia. Edel asks him to be lenient towards Lady Lydia. The Count agreed that his sister and housekeeper had suffered because of his incompetence. Laszlo heard that Edel was having problems in the laundry, so he offered her a job in the kitchen. Edel realized that she could no longer work with Celia and Layla. She even wonders what other punishment awaits her. When she asked if there would be more punishment, Laszlo replied that she was not a victim, but it is a common practice for maids to be punished. But Laszlo, dumbfounded, asks if he is really a fool to do this. Edel knows that this will damage the authority of both the owner and the offender. Laszlo realized why those knights were so self-confident. Since he is a former mercenary, he does not know all these customs. At first, Edel thought that the Count was simply a cruel and terrible person. But looking at his actions, he seems more sensible. Now is the perfect time to ask the Count for something. Edel asked if the other maids could be allowed to use the hot water. Laszlo is shocked. He is surprised that they washed in cold water in such weather. He realized almost immediately who was behind all this. Edel thought that the ban on the use of firewood was actually imposed by the Count. Laszlo can't believe that someone forces them to use cold water in winter. Although he didn't say it directly, you can buy as much yard as you want. Realizing that it is his fault, the Count promises to resolve this issue tomorrow. He thanks Adele because otherwise he wouldn't have known about it. And now Laszlo doesn't seem so scary to her. The Count ordered the laundry room and bathroom to be renovated. The maids were already thinking of returning home because of the cold. A disgruntled Bo-hyun bursts in on them, asking why they are making noise. She asked Edel why she, the imperial gift, was slacking off. She said that because of Edel, only Layla and Celia were unlucky. Celia asked how she could be upset with Edel over such a trifle. Bo-hyun learned that the Count was shocked to learn that the maids washed themselves with cold water. Confused, she said that she would go to him and check everything herself. They both pretend they don't know and that it's a misunderstanding. But this was not so, because Edel herself heard this from the Count. Bo-hyun thought that Edel wanted to undermine her power. She started screaming that she would not forgive her if the vegetables spoiled due to her fault. Both the owner of the mansion and the servants were at the mercy of this man. And Adele is the only maid who doesn't have to fear being fired. Lydia is worried that Edel is now also disappointed in her. She should have just called a servant instead of sending Edel there. The next day, the cook scolds Adele because she didn't clean the cauldron. But that's her job, and she said she just forgot. Edel asked her to stop being cunning, because it wouldn't work. She will no longer be a servant who endures everything. Cooking 3 times a day really turned out to be difficult. Every hour you need to process food and wash dishes. Edel realizes that her meeting with Layla and Celia was a great stroke of luck. The main character needs to try, because they are her friends too. Bo-hyun was paying a supplier who was not feeling very well. She didn't like it and said she would find another supplier. Edel sees that the merchant is hesitant to sign the contract. She suddenly thought that they might be stealing the estate's money. She hears the steps of the housekeeper, who has already managed to go up to the 2nd floor. She probably just left the receipt in the Count's office and left. It's good that there's no one here, although it's still dangerous. The girl finds a receipt from the store and reads it. It says here that all the vegetables are of the highest quality, when in fact they arrived in poor condition. They take advantage of the fact that the estate does not understand the varieties. They were embezzling money for food, and all that remains is to find a book with these scams. Such people are obsessed with money and will not miss a penny. Edel is even sure that they probably steal not only food products. At that moment, Lydia accidentally noticed her in the corridor. She asked in surprise what Edel was doing here. Edel begins to quickly think about what to answer. Now she decides to say only the most necessary things. She ended up saying she was worried about Lydia. She heard that the Count had punished her and was worried whether everything was okay. The situation was hopeless then, and Lydia was also scared. Lydia asked if Edel had asked her brother to shorten her arrest. Edel said he agreed to do it. Lilia was outraged that Laszlo was always scolding her, but she still thanked Edel, blushing slightly. And then she asked if Edel knew Viscountess Emerson. Lydia hopes she liked her when she was at her reception. Camilla and Angela were talking about decorations for the event. Then Camilla said that she invited Lydia Chrysis. Angela knows her as the sister of that former mercenary. Lydia really hopes that she can become friends with her. Right now, Lydia really needs one true friend. Edel asks to wait until the next meeting, since during the first meetings, everyone is looking at each other. Lydia was glad that she asked her about it. She wonders what Edel is thinking, since she is also seeing her for the third time. True friendship takes time and sincere effort, and Lydia will understand this when she meets her soulmate. There is no housekeeper today, so you can relax a little, but you have to be careful with such talk. Edel worries about Lydia, wondering what she looks like now. The main character is worried, but hopes that everything will work out. When Bo-hyun appears, she asks someone to come here. The maids run up to her in panic, asking what happened. Lydia angrily asks who left the broken vase here. It's already March, and the winter decorations are still not put away. In other houses, flowers are already blooming while such an atmosphere reigns here. She ordered the maids to clean up, as they couldn't work without her. But they think she's taking it out on them by comparing them to other houses. The maid asked the others who could clean the mistress's room. No one volunteered, so Edel decided to do it herself. Lydia told her that she was also asked to come tomorrow. They ignore her, mock her, and at the same time smile in her face. And Lydia cannot present anything, since she will remain guilty. But she hates herself for this, because she cannot answer them. Edel guesses that Lydia had it too hard. She doesn't understand why it's necessary to arrange a reception for 3 days. But no matter how hard it is for her, she will still have to go. Lydia asks why she has to go through this. Lydia endures all the humiliations, cries, and feels offended. If she refuses, her brother will be condemned. But Lydia is condemned even when she comes. She's just lost and doesn't know what to do. First, Lydia needs to restore her reputation. To begin with, Edel suggests that she take a warm bath. Angela and Camilla discuss Lydia in a bad way. They want to make her understand that she has no place in high society. But they are sure that the Count will not leave it like that. For them, Lydia is just entertainment at receptions. When Lydia arrived at the appointment, she took a deep breath, trying not to worry. To begin with, she had already sat down safely, and nothing happened. She was helped by the most kind person she knows. Edel asked her to focus only on herself during the appointment, and she will have to become a little more indifferent to other people's views. Soon the music started playing, and the guests began to dance. Lydia calms herself down, promising herself that she will cope. She drinks tea slowly, not even knowing that it could be so tasty. Although she feels people staring at her, she can cope with it. While she was drowning in her thoughts, someone approached her. Suddenly, she is told that this dress suits her very well. They also complimented her on her necklace. Lydia didn't even expect that someone would praise her today. Camilla asks the guests if they enjoyed the reception. They replied that they should not take their seats for long. Lydia decided not to stay late, otherwise her brother would scold her. Camilla asked if she really didn't like the reception, but Lydia replied that she had been having fun since yesterday. The women were surprised at how Lydia put Camilla in her place. They asked her to give her the same clear rebuff as now. Lydia said this without thinking, but it seems she hit the nail on the head. Edel had previously asked who chose her dress and necklace. These pieces are elegant and simple. They suit her. If Lydia wears this, she will look decent. Bo-hyun told her that she was too young to choose. But the housekeeper is wrong, because Lydia has good taste. When Lydia changed her clothes, she looked at herself in the mirror. Later, Edel was summoned by Lydia and Laszlo. He wants Edel to become Lydia's maid from tomorrow. Laszlo thought that this role suited her best. The man also apologized for calling her so late. But if Lydia causes trouble again, he won't let it go unpunished. Lydia will grow up in this mansion, loved and free. Edel hopes that her sister will allow her to look after Lydia. Surely Laszlo and Lydia have supported each other since childhood. Adel and Lin also had an older brother, but they never communicated. They were like strangers, absolutely different in everything. Edel didn't understand why everything turned out this way. They called her selfish because they could have just been happy. She is asked not to be stubborn and to agree to marry the Duke of Lancaster. Edel's room will be next to Lydia's room. The salary will increase. Laszlo doesn't want to force her to see the room, so he'll show it tomorrow. Edel promised to do her best if they allowed it. Now she's just Edel, not Lancaster or Canyon. The maids noticed that Edel had a very good influence on Lydia. Edel said that Lydia chose everything she needed herself, and she only helped. Laszlo notes that Edel looks better than before. Now it will be easier for her to communicate with Madame Celestina. It wouldn't hurt the Count to have a table and a sofa in his office. Since Edel helped his sister, he wants to thank her personally. But Edel didn't do it for the reward, and the promotion was enough for her. Since it is not easy for her to cope alone, he asks her to accept at least this. When Lydia returned, she said that Edel had dressed her up. She was pleased and happy that everything suited her. Laszlo was genuinely surprised to hear that Lydia had returned without being disgraced. He thought that Lydia was so sincere and joyful since childhood, but he left her without help, simply believing in it. Perhaps they have become irreparably distant from each other. As a token of his gratitude, he wants Edel to accept the check. But the girl can't accept this. She doesn't need it. Laszlo offers to buy her clothes and jewelry, but she cannot leave the mansion. He asked if she had received her salary last month. When Edel said yes, Laszlo replied that there was no need to lock her in the mansion. He thought she was tough, but she had a soft side. Only now did he understand how much they needed such a person. Edel felt like something like an angel to him. Edel said she would prefer something else instead of money. She said she wanted Laszlo to believe that her words were true. But the man already believes her, so he asks her to say whatever she wants. But this is her request. She wants him to believe her words. Soon Lydia receives a new invitation to a reception. The girl is sure that this is all only thanks to Edel. Since their rooms are next to each other, Edel can start moving things. When Lydia returned to the room, Bo-yun suddenly came to her. Bo-yun thinks that Lydia felt uncomfortable without her today. She took out a new flower powder, which supposedly would make Lydia more beautiful. But the lady waved it off and broke the bottle because she didn't need it. Now Lydia knows that she will be judged for such cosmetics. Bo-yun makes excuses that she was recommended by maids from other houses, but Lydia doesn't even want to listen to her and asks her to get out of the room. But Bo-yun promised that she wouldn't just let it go. Daisy cries constantly because she and Edel have been seeing each other less often. Edel offered to let her share the room with her because it was too big for her alone. The housekeeper assigned rooms according to her preferences, and the rooms of many of the maids, including Edel's, were at the very end. Edel thought it was worth using as evidence. Daisy asked her how she was going to decorate this room. But in reality, Edel never even thought about it. She invites Daisy to go shopping next weekend. Daisy agreed without any hesitation, and Edel thanked her. She likes that everything is starting to improve, including her relationship with Lydia. Lydia still can't find her pearl clasp. Edel assumed that it was in the pearl box. Lydia thought so too, and decided that she had simply put it in the wrong place. There were too many empty spaces inside, as if something was missing. If only the hairpin had gone missing, it could have been attributed to Lydia's oversight. But this was definitely theft, so Lydia had to gather all the maids. Bo-hyun gathered all the servants as ordered by the mistress. She says that no one else cleans her room except for 3 maids. They need to check all the maids' rooms to find out who stole the jewelry. Lydia is sure that the stolen items have already been sold, although these things were not particularly expensive or beloved. To give a fair punishment, we need to get to the bottom of everything. Edel notes that the lady has very good intuition. Although she can be hot-tempered, it is difficult to get rid of habits right away. Soon, Bo-hyun reports that they have found the room where the stolen jewelry was kept. And suddenly, the housekeeper unexpectedly points her finger at Edel. She orders the immediate capture of Daisy, Edel, Celia, and Layla. Edel can't believe her ears. There's clearly some mistake here. Celia is sure that this is slander, because they are not even allowed to enter the rooms. The lady agrees that this is all too strange. Bo-hyun, on the contrary, says that they are definitely short of money. But Lydia doesn't believe that Edel stole the things and gave them to the maids. Since she needs to leave for a while, she dismisses 3 maids. But Bo-hyun is sure that they don't even have proof of innocence. Edel asked if Lydia really believed she was a thief. However, Edel was able to restrain herself and not scream in this situation. Because of Lydia, her friends were slandered, and she doesn't like it. And at that moment, Edel really felt more than resentment. Lydia asked if Edel would be able to prove her innocence, but the main character promised to prove it by justifying Lydia's trust. The Count had already learned that something serious had happened while he was away. Edel decided to tell him everything as it really was. The housekeeper's accusations against Edel are unfounded. Those stolen things found in her friend's room do not prove her guilt. She asks if Laszlo remembers that she asked him to trust her. The man could not forget this, and he believed in her innocence. The real problem lay in the content of some of the documents. Bo-hyun stole the servants' money, committed fraud, and pocketed the difference in the cost of the products. Edel requests an official investigation on behalf of the Count. He doesn't understand how this relates to Bo-hyun's accusations. Because of Edel, Bo-hyun can no longer manipulate Lydia. She also wanted to get rid of everyone Edel was friends with. They were poor, so they were given the hardest work. Edel had been waiting for this very moment, asking people to trust her many times. She doesn't know if they will believe her, rejected by her family and the duchy. It was Laszlo's fault that he let things go wrong at the estate. He knows that Edel is not the type to talk nonsense. Edel turned out to be a valuable person who opened his eyes. Laszlo asked the girl if she was ready for the consequences. Soon the housekeeper was taken into custody and taken for interrogation. She is asked to tell what and how she appropriated it. Bo-hyun continued to shout that it was a misunderstanding and it wasn't her fault. But Bo-hyun bought cheap products and sold them for the highest quality. She also inflated the price of expensive items, curtains, and art objects. She made money by buying cosmetics for the lady. The amount of embezzlement is approximately 250,000. Bo-hyun explodes, asking if they know how hard it is to run a mansion. She wants them to turn a blind eye to this, because she worked hard for these 3 years. But the Count offers her a choice. Either she is sent to the police, or she will sign a promissory note. The amount increased because compensation for her life was added. So they gave her a choice. The remaining maids were cleared of charges and are safe again. But now the problem was that the housekeeper's position was free. She will be the one who exposed Bo-hyun's crimes, that is, Edel. If anyone disagrees and has objections, they can speak up. After the storm, an almost oppressive silence reigned in the estate. It is necessary to redistribute responsibilities and hire new people. The maids are happy that Edel has become a housekeeper. One night, Edel heard a knock on the door and went to open it. It turned out to be the Count, apologizing for the late visit. The Count's mercenaries found hidden double ledgers. After comparison, it turned out that Bo-hyun had not kept any of the books properly. Edel's head ached from the realization that she would have to start the farm from scratch. It's easier and more familiar than what she did before. When Edel heard a knock on the door, she was sure it was the maids. But, to her surprise, it turned out to be Count Laszlo. He said she could leave the door open so she wouldn't think anything like that. Edel wanted to treat him, but the Count refused because it was not necessary. He reiterates that thanks to Edel, Lydia has become more cheerful. Everything is so natural, as if it should be this way. Edel believes that this is due to the lady's energetic nature. Lydia had always been like this, but Laszlo never understood it. Everything that he couldn't give her for years, Edel changed in a matter of months. No matter how many times he thanks her, it won't be enough. He wants to continue asking Edel for help, but not as the Count, but personally. Lydia is nothing like Laszlo, and she did not choose to be born his sister. The Count said that Edel might hate and despise him, but Edel doesn't hate him and doesn't understand why he's so worried about it. She thinks it would be better if the Count got something else instead of her. But Laszlo believes that the Emperor gave him the most valuable person. Edel was slightly embarrassed and thanked him for such words. No one thought that the traitor's wife would dare to survive. The Count promises her that if she continues to live, good days will come. Edel tries to hold back her tears and her emotions. She needs to hide her true feelings, but she still cried, saying that she also wanted to live a normal life. Laszlo allows her to cry, holding out a handkerchief. He guesses that it was the hardest thing for her in everyday life. The handkerchief he held out gave off a warm comfort. Ordinary family and friends seemed the most incomprehensible to Edel. After a long time, she slept a dreamless night. Edel distributed the duties of the maids according to their wishes. Lydia admits that she was nervous while being manipulated by Bo-hyun, and she apologizes to everyone for causing them so much trouble. Her goal is to manage the estate in a way that will not cause shame. She also apologized to the maids for not being able to clear them of the charges earlier. The others thank her for the delicious fruits from the new store. Lydia is glad that everything has returned to normal and hopes that it will continue this way. Thus, the House of Chrysis starts all over again. Daisy's promised day off finally arrived. So much has happened, and now I can finally rest. Daisy asked Edel if she wanted to go somewhere. It was important for Edel to spend time with Daisy right now, and at that moment, she suddenly hears someone calling her. It turned out to be Lady Lucille Arton, whom Edel also recognized. Daisy feels a strange atmosphere and becomes worried. Edel reassured her that she just needed to say hello and leave. But someone asks whether a criminal can be on the street. They discuss how Edel became a servant because of her crimes. If she had even a drop of shame, She would lie in the grave with the traitors. If they were Edel, they would have preferred a dignified death. Edel said that the Count had given her permission to go out and was not going to say anything more. The heroine realized that these people were no different from Boyan. They think that she became the mercenary's mistress, which is why she acts so confident. They should have guessed when she started calling this commoner a count. Edel shouldn't have to endure their insults, but she shouldn't fall for their provocation. Laszlo himself suddenly appears, who didn't even know that he had a mistress. Edel is genuinely surprised, because she didn't expect to see him here. 30 minutes earlier, Lydia and Laszlo had lunch in a street food area. When Laszlo eats regular street food, he thinks that this is what suits him. Lydia recalls that they became orphans as teenagers. She wonders how a child could care for another child. She asks Laszlo not to avoid the answer, and to tell her everything. Lydia realizes that she doesn't even remember her parents' faces. Since she is no longer little, she wants to know more. My earliest memory of my parents was their cozy home, but this ordinary life was destroyed in an instant. Now Laszlo even wonders how far they were able to get. He hoped that there would be a safe place where he could stay with Lydia. They were found by their grandmother, who had previously given them meat pie. She offered to go to her house, promising to treat them to delicious food. Laszlo, who has been living on the run, is confident that she can be trusted. While the grandmother was leading them, she asked their names. He named Lydia Laszlo, but he didn't even know his own name, so he made it up. Later, Laszlo began to go out to earn money while Lydia was being looked after. They cared for them, other people's children, with love. Lydia remembers that her grandparents were always warm. Even though that house was cramped, it was good. Lydia may not remember her parents' faces, but she will never forget the taste of her grandmother's meat. Lydia is starting to like their current home and is curious to see how much better it will get. So, while they were walking, they came across Edel. They were furious that such bad things were said about her. The Count intervenes, asking why they are spreading rumors about things they don't know. For a commoner, he behaves quite politely, but this is on purpose. Laszlo asks them to apologize for slandering him and his maid. Laszlo asked if Edel remembered their names, and she began to list them. Eventually, these people reluctantly apologized. Since the Count does not want to complicate the situation, he accepts the apology. Edel also accepts their apologies along with him. After that, they immediately ran away, and someone already thought that there would be a fight. Daisy suddenly saw her father, asking him what he was doing there. Edel came here to paint a portrait with Daisy, but suddenly she saw familiar faces. And suddenly, Lydia declares that she also wants to paint a portrait. She said that in order to remember his face, she should at least draw it, because suddenly he would die in the war. Lydia no longer wants to forget the people dear to her. It's natural for a family to worry like this, but Lydia braces herself for his death every time he leaves. Laszlo begins to realize his shortcomings again. He thought that perhaps he and Edel had something in common. Edel feels awkward in front of Daisy, hoping to have a better rest next time. So they came to a place where they paint portraits in 30 minutes. Lydia didn't know about such a place, but Laszlo heard that they do quick pastel drawing here. Commoners began to paint portraits in imitation of aristocrats. Lydia was not happy with Laszlo's appearance. He needed to dress properly and shave. At the same time, Edel tells Daisy that he will pay for her portrait. The ladies will be looked after by a student who is quite skilled. As soon as they sat down, Daisy began to worry. But Edel asks not to be nervous, asking to imagine how they are relaxing together. Edel only painted one portrait after her wedding, and she never made it into the Canyon family portrait. The portrait in the Lancaster house has already burned, and this portrait may be her only one. The worker says that with such beauty, they should become singers or actresses. But Edel was happy with her current life. Everything suited her. The worker believes that with such an appearance, tickets will sell quickly. Laszlo interrupts him, asking him to paint a portrait for them too, since he has finished. Marco, Daisy's father, also takes part in the portrait with Daisy, and Laszlo asked the owner to paint a separate portrait of Edel. Since Duchess Celestine is worried about Edel, he wants to send her a portrait. Edel thanked him for caring about her so much. She thought she was already happy with her life, but it turns out she can still hope for the best. Laszlo offered to return by carriage, but Edel and Daisy still needed to buy some things. He asks them to enjoy their free time and they say goodbye. After this, Edel invites Daisy to continue shopping. It was an unexpectedly long day for Laszlo. He remembers that he needs to send this portrait of Edel to Duchess Celestine. But he doesn't want to do this. He kept the portrait for himself. After this weekend, new servants arrived at the mansion. Edel wanted to hire a new maid for Lydia, but many refused. From the new existing servants, she chose 2 suitable ones. She suggested separating things into those that needed to be thrown away and those that needed to be kept. But suddenly, Daisy appeared and asked if she could do it. Lydia promised to help them select the things that didn't fit. Daisy was assigned this task, and she promised to do her best. Daisy's kindness will help in developing her character. She hopes that they will be a good influence on each other. They need to finish the laundry before lunch, and then they can order new things. They soon met the tailor from Duchess. Lydia wants to order an evening dress, a dress for a picnic and walks. Edel asked if she could help her, and Lydia wondered where to start. The tailor noticed that Lydia was relying on her maid, but was doing nothing herself. While Lydia was choosing one dress, the tailor offered her another. She said that this design is popular among girls now. Edel said that such a dress would be more suitable for the tailor herself. She had already guessed that the woman was trying to get rid of an unprofitable product. While the tailor is offering dresses, Lydia interrupts her, replying that there is no need for that. She said that she would order the dress that she had chosen earlier. Lydia asked the tailor if she didn't like her taste. Edel notes that Lydia is doing a good job of handling this herself. She will be there so that Lydia learns to surround herself with worthy people. As a result, Lydia successfully completed her first resale. She gives Edel perfume, although she actually bought it for herself. They noticed a merchant eavesdropping on them. Still, Lydia really gives the gift to Edel, because she is not petty. Edel thanks her for the gift, and Lydia asks her to use it well. Now Edel has one more precious thing. In recent days, she has been using the ointment that Daisy gave her. Last weekend, he and Daisy bought a diary. Edel wants to write down there all the memories that she has built in this place. Suddenly, Lydia runs into her room, apologizing for not knocking. She grabbed the girl by the hands and asked her to take care of her brother. At the Brunchen mansion, Lydia was praised for her appearance. Jeremiah Brunchen also received a compliment from her. At other parties, Lydia was looked at askance. But here everything is fine. She was asked how her brother Laszlo was doing. Since he is a commander, Lydia rarely sees him, and suddenly she is told that the Count seems frightening. The girl asks not to misunderstand her, because he is supposed to look menacing. Jeremiah said the Count seemed a little unapproachable. They discussed that Lydia could help him, because it's time for him to get married. Lydia remembered that most aristocrats were judged by reputation and appearance. But she herself will not be able to cope with her brother's stubbornness. If things remain like this, Laszlo will be left without any friends at all. The next day, Lydia and Edel come to the Count. Lydia began to say that she couldn't distinguish him from a robber. Edel noted that Laszlo looked very tired. If Lydia gets married, no one will want to be related to someone like Laszlo. And this despite the fact that he also wants to marry her off. Aristocrats are very picky about people's appearance. But the Count is not obliged to take into account anyone's opinion except the Emperor's. Edel casually said that if he wanted to go out into society, he should get himself in order. But Laszlo asked what exactly he needed to change. Haircut and shaving are mandatory, as is skincare. After a million comments from Edel, the Count said he understood everything. In any case, it is up to Laszlo to decide whether to follow these rules or not. For the sake of a nobleman's dignity, he should at least think about it. Lydia offers him to make his debut in society if he does not intend to give up his title. They will transform him from head to toe and make him simply charming. But transforming the Count with your own hands will not be an easy task. A few days later, a barber came to the Chris's estate. Edel promises him that he will be careful and do everything right. Laszlo understands that he is not a child, but for some reason, he feels like he is being watched. Edel suggests leaving the bangs and cutting the hair short in the back. She also asks that his sideburns be carefully trimmed. Some time passed, and the Count turned into a different person. The man does not recognize himself at all in the mirror's reflection. Edel didn't expect that a haircut and shave would have such an effect. It was not for nothing that Edel recommended hiring a hairdresser. Now Laszlo will definitely attract more attention. Edel clarified that she will, of course, continue to help. Laszlo's assistant laughed at his new appearance. The Count turned red as a tomato, saying that it was all Lydia's idea. Then the assistant asked him, since when the captain had been listening to the mistress. Laszlo decided to do at least something for Lydia, because he had always lived for himself. At that moment, Edel came in to see them, but was already about to leave when she saw the guest. The girl plans to purchase men's clothing and accessories. After that, she left, and Laszlo said that he would count on her. The assistant sees the captain smiling like that for the first time in his life. Without even asking, he knows it's Edel's work. Lydia suggests planting roses in their garden to make it beautiful. She wants to tidy up the garden, just like other families. Laszlo would like to spend more time at home, but he can't because of training. If only the guards were half as diligent as Edel. But no matter how much you train them, they always mark time. Laszlo doesn't know how he can close the gap between them. Lydia noticed that he was deep in thought and didn't even answer her. She warns them not to be so daydreaming when they arrive. A few days ago, Lydia received an invitation to Count Bliss's party. She tried to persuade her brother to go with her, but he didn't want to. Laszlo asked if it was necessary to go to this particular person's party. But Lydia was no longer afraid, and she wanted to show how Laszlo had changed. Edel also thinks that this is very good for his debut. All those who despise Lydia will gather at this celebration. So if Laszlo goes there, he will see who his sister ran into. Angela's cousin, Enoch, talks to her and Camilla. Camilla believes that Lydia, a commoner, acts superior to her. But Angela assumes that Lydia will most likely come without a partner. Enoch promises Angela that he will find her a good partner. He knows someone who has unclean hands, but who is looking for a young girl. Angela heard a sudden noise. Turning around, she saw Lydia with some man. People looking around began to recognize the former mercenary. Camilla thinks that this is Lydia's way of finally eclipsing them. But since this is how it turned out, Angela suggests that we come up first and say hello. She is not sure if they can meet the Count, since his position is higher than theirs. When they came up and said hello, Angela asked Lydia if she remembered her. Of course, Lydia remembers Angela and Camilla very well. Camilla asks her to introduce her handsome companion. Thus, Lydia introduces her brother to them. Laszlo says that it just so happened that this is his first time at the festival. Angela wanted to introduce them both to her grandfather. Lydia noticed how different Angela was from who she was. But Laszlo interrupted Angela and said that there was no need for that. Camilla wanted to say how rude he was, but Angela stopped her in time. Angela had no idea that Laszlo would turn out to be such a man. Interesting times await secular society now. Soon, Laszlo met with the emperor in his office. The emperor also laughed at his new appearance. When he said it was Edel's idea, the emperor was convinced that she had no equal in this regard. The person who received the information is a complete sly one. Now Laszlo will not be able to escape from the noble society. The emperor thanks him for making such a difficult decision. It was a troublesome business, but there was no particular reason. Now socialite ladies will start looking for a meeting with Laszlo's sister. But the emperor clarifies that they don't need Lydia, but Laszlo. His changed behavior signifies his determination to integrate into noble society. Having become closer to Lydia, they can talk to Laszlo about marriage. Laszlo admits that he never thought about marriage. But if His Majesty orders me to marry, then I will have to do it. This answer slightly disappoints the emperor. He feels like he is the last romantic left on Earth. Still, he hopes that Laszlo will find a loved one. The emperor promised to spend time with his wife, so it was time for him to go. Laszlo thought that the marriage of nobles was a political act. At least, in the world he knew, that was how it was. But when he thinks about true love, only one person comes to mind. Having met with Edel, Lydia tells her how the holiday went. She didn't get to dance with her brother, but this won't be the last time. There will be other opportunities. She also told her brother about everyone who had shamed her. It seemed that if he had a sword, he would have caught them all. Edel laughed, thinking that she should have gone with the Count. Lydia said Edel had been with her in her heart since the moment she gave her advice. Now she is not ashamed to know what others know. And henceforth, together with Edel, she will learn everything in order. Lydia asked Edel to help her read the invitations. Laszlo doesn't understand why he gets so many letters. What they sent to Lydia means that he is invited too. But that's okay, because now everyone knows about his handsome face. The Count was embarrassed, not thinking that this was also according to the rules of noble society. Everyone will want to start a relationship with the Count, even though the intentions are obvious. The Count will be grateful to Edel if she selects houses for answers. Edel understands that then he will have to meet with many nobles. The Count's future bride may appear at any of these meetings. She suddenly remembered that Laszlo asked her to make the masks herself. She noted that his eyelashes were very long and thick. There is a small scar just below his left cheek. Edel realized that other people would now see all of this. Unexpectedly for herself, the girl blushed. And Laszlo noticed it too. Noticing how her cheeks were burning, the Count thought that she had caught a cold. The main character doesn't understand why her heart suddenly started beating so fast. Laszlo assumed she was tired, and Adele was inclined to think the same. Edel tells him that there were no difficulties with the work itself. However, there are issues that are difficult to resolve in the position of a maid. There was already a butler in this house, but he turned out to be a spy. As soon as Laszlo suspected something, they were immediately removed, and Bohyun was hired precisely because she had no connections. Therefore, the search for the truly needed person dragged on. Establishing mutual trust is much more difficult than it seems. But suddenly, Laszlo decides that Edel herself can become a butler. She has experience working with family finances and is capable of looking after an entire mansion. But Adele doesn't understand how she can be a butler. The Count says that he has already entrusted her with his secret. Now it's Edel's turn to prove her integrity. In the end, she gave her word that she would believe the Count. Laszlo knows very well that Edel won't talk nonsense. In the end, Adele agrees to become a butler because he doesn't have much of a choice. Laszlo asks to follow him so that Edel can finally learn the secret of the family. It's time for the Count to return to the palace, and Edel wishes him a safe journey. Laszlo asks the new butler to take care of the estate. Later, one of the maids reports that a cloth merchant has arrived. Edel asks to be told to wait in the living room and serve simple drinks first. Another merchant presents his oil to the main character. Since Edel became a butler, her responsibilities have become much greater. She feels ever more acutely the weight of the trust placed in her by the Count. The fabric merchant lets Edel decide for herself how long she wants her curtains to be. She eventually asked to be told again if anything better came up. When purchasing essential goods, compromises cannot be made so easily. Later, Edel meets with Lydia and Daisy. Lydia said that she was now going for a walk with Daisy. Lydia said that a new gardener would arrive soon. Celia, as Edel had taught her, prepared a report. Edel knows better than anyone how small differences can affect a house's reputation. Laszlo's assistant, Nathan, also helped Edel sometimes. The final interview and selection was conducted by Edel. Nathan doesn't want to be praised, so he asks not to do it. Although, to be honest, he likes to hear praise. Nathan trusts Laszlo's choice in choosing Edel. Perhaps the heroine feels that she has a heavier responsibility on her shoulders, harder than the secret that Count Chrysis revealed to her. That evening, Laszlo showed the girl all the treasures of the head of the family. Edel asked in horror how he could open such things in front of her. But Laszlo thinks it's important since she's going to be the butler of the house. Laszlo reminds him that he is a man who can die at any time. Since he had no one to consult with, now it was just what he needed. The Count is a war hero and the Emperor's right hand. Considering the kind of person he is, it is not surprising that he talks about death. Edel thinks it's because of the threat of the three houses he speaks of. Until now, Laszlo had only thought about this vaguely, but recently he had reason to realize it deeply. It all happened because of the moment his sister said she was afraid for him. Along with these words, the Count entrusted Edel with a pile of documents. He thanked her for her efforts at the mansion, telling her that she could continue in the same spirit. The condition turned out to be much greater than Edel expected. The ring Edel wore was a bit heavy for her, but that wasn't surprising. It was a ring with a seal that gave the right to exercise the powers of the head of the family. Edel isn't sure if the man is careless or if the size is too big. After talking with Count Edel, Lydia quickly finds him. They are both busy lately and don't have time to talk. For now, Edel doesn't want to put the heavy burden on the mistress. So for now, the girl decides to keep this ring. When Lydia grows up a little, Edel will return the ring to her. Laszlo feels like Edel wants to live more than before. Lately, she doesn't seem like the type who wanted to die alone. Compared to that time, now you can feel her will to live. This means that from now on, the Count must give her everything she likes. Then the Count told her that she could become the one who could rely on him. Edel may no longer be ashamed to accept help. She finally admitted that the Count had always needed a person like her. A few days later, all the servants of the mansion were given leave. They decided that they would still have some things to catch up on when they got back. They enjoy working in this mansion anyway. Edel, looking out the window, noted that the weather was nice today. The hour came, and the main character met Barbara after a long time.